They left me at the airport with a suitcase, a one-way ticket, and a lie. My own son said, "You don't live there anymore, Dad." Most men my age would have broken right there, but I didn't. I just sat at gate 12, watching planes take off, and started making a list, because what Darren didn't know is that the deed he thought he stole was never real. I'd signed my name to something that day, but it wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Hello, my name's Walter Briggs, 72 years old, retired Air Force engineer, widower, and until recently, a man who thought trust was the strongest metal a family could forge. After my wife Elaine passed 3 winters ago, the house we built together in Boulder felt like a museum, each room holding echoes of her laughter and the quiet hum of our shared years. The silence got heavy, and I thought maybe being closer to my son would lighten the load. Darren, my only child, lived just an hour away with his wife Mia and their 2 kids. He worked in real estate, smooth, charming, and always on his phone. Mia was younger than him by a decade, all manicured perfection and social media smiles. When I called one spring morning saying I was thinking about downsizing, Darren didn't hesitate. "Dad, that's perfect," he said. "Move closer to us. I'll handle all the paperwork. We'll make it simple." I wanted to believe him. God knows I did. A few months later, I was living 10 minutes from their home, a smaller place, quiet neighborhood, mountain view. Darren handled the sale of the old house himself, said it would be streamlined if everything was under a single title temporarily while I settled in. "Just sign here, Dad, it's all legal mumbo-jumbo," he said with that easy grin of his. I trusted him enough not to read the fine print. He used to look at me the way sons look at their fathers, with something like pride. These days, I couldn't find that in his eyes anymore. Just calculation. At first, things seemed fine. Sunday dinners, grandkids climbing my lap, Mia calling me Dad with that sugary smile. Then small things changed. It started with her comments. "Walter, maybe sit this one out. The kids get nervous when your hands shake." Or, "We'll bring your food later after everyone's done, it's just easier that way." I brushed it off. Told myself she didn't mean harm, but every remark carved another quiet bruise. One evening, as we sat on the porch, Darren mentioned something about my forgetfulness. "You know, Dad, maybe we should start sorting your finances, just in case. I mean, memory fades with age." I stared at him, coffee cooling in my hands. "My memory's just fine," I said. He smiled politely, the way people do when they've already decided you're wrong. 2 weeks later, my neighbor, Carolyn Miles, who used to be a paralegal, knocked on my door holding my mail. "These came to my box by mistake," she said, handing me a stack of envelopes. I noticed one return address on county recorder's office. Inside, a document listed, "Transfer of property ownership, Briggs residence with Darren Briggs and Mia Briggs as the new owners." My name was still there, but struck through. The ground seemed to tilt. I called Darren. "Son, why does the deed say your name?" He laughed. "It's just a temporary reclassification for tax efficiency, Dad. Don't stress over bureaucratic nonsense." He'd said it too smoothly, too easily. I'd heard that tone before, in briefings when someone was hiding a mistake they hoped the brass wouldn't catch. That night I went through my filing cabinet and realized half my financial mail was missing. Statements, pension updates, gone. For the first time in my life, I felt unsafe in my own home. A month later, on my birthday, Darren and Mia showed up with balloons and smiles too bright to be real. "Surprise, Dad? We got you a trip to Texas, first class." They said my old war buddy, Frank, was expecting me. I hadn't spoken to Frank in 5 years. Still, I played along. They drove me to Denver International, helped with my luggage, hugged me goodbye. I watched them wave as I disappeared into the terminal. The flight was real. The plan wasn't. When I landed, Frank wasn't there. He hadn't heard from anyone. Confused, I called Darren. He answered on speaker, his voice cool and distant. "Dad, you don't live there anymore. We've decided it's best for everyone. You need structure. Maybe assisted living for a while." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "You sold my home?" I asked. He paused. "It's ours now, Dad. You'll be fine. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Then the line went dead. I sat on a plastic chair near gate 12 for 3 hours, my suitcase at my feet, wallet holding $180 and a driver's license that still listed the home they'd stolen. People walked past, families reuniting, children laughing, Somewhere a man in a Santa hat was playing Silent Night on a harmonica. That's when the numbness lifted. I wasn't broken, just focused. I thought of every system I'd maintained in my years with the Air Force, fail-safes, redundancies, data backups. And I remembered something important. 3 months earlier, when I'd started sensing things were off, I'd gone to Carolyn. We'd copied every original property document and notarized them ourselves. The paper Darren made me sign? A decoy. The real deed, mine, was sitting in a safe deposit box under Carolyn's name. I almost smiled. They thought they'd abandoned a frail old man at an airport. But what they really did was activate a soldier with nothing left to lose and every receipt in hand. I stood, adjusted my jacket, and made a note in my pocketbook. January 14th, 7:32 p.m., the moment my son declared war, and the moment I decided to end it. Then I walked toward the terminal exit not as a victim, but as an engineer drawing up the blueprint for justice. The first night after the airport, I slept sitting up in the corner of the USO lounge, head against my duffel bag, boots unlaced. The fluorescent lights hummed, and the intercom kept announcing departures I'd never take. In my dreams, Elaine's voice came back, not in sorrow, but calm and steady, like she used to sound when I worked on circuit boards late into the night. Walt, when they underestimate you, that's when you start building. When I woke, I had a plan. I took a bus back to Boulder, 3 hours through snow and silence. My house, their house now, stood the same as ever. The porch light glowing, Mia's silver SUV in the driveway, kids' bikes on the lawn. Only the mailbox had changed. Where it once read Walter Briggs, 212 Ridgeview Drive, a shiny new label now read Darren and Mia Briggs Family Home. I didn't go near it. Not yet. Instead, I checked into a small room above the Copper Lantern Diner, the kind of place that still gave discounts to veterans. The owner, Jackie, didn't ask questions when I handed her cash for a week up front. "Got a name I should write on the registry?" she asked. I thought for a second, then said, "Briggs'll do. Just Briggs." I spent the next few days at the VFW post, quietly helping fix their old network router and earning a cot in the back office. No one knew what had happened. I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Not yet. But while I worked, I kept notes, dates, conversations, account changes. Every transaction Darren had touched in the last year. I'd spent 40 years designing radar systems. I knew how to trace signals. People leave patterns, and Darren's trail glowed like runway lights. Every night I returned to the diner, ate half a sandwich, and wrote until my hand cramped. Trust is like a circuit. Once broken, current finds another path. Mine just happens to lead straight to payback. On the 4th night, I went to see Carolyn Miles, my old neighbor, sharp as ever, still with that paralegal's precision in her eyes. She opened the door before I even knocked. "I saw your name on the news, Walt. Veteran turned 72 today. You didn't look like a man celebrating." I smiled faintly. Wouldn't call it a celebration. Inside her small living room, I finally told her everything. The flight, the phone call, the house. She listened, no interruption, no pity, just focus. Then she leaned forward. "You still have the notarized original deed?" I nodded. "Then they've stepped in it deep," she said. The version they filed was a copy of a voided draft. "Fraudulent transfer, possible elder exploitation." Her tone shifted, and from friend to strategist. "Walt, we're not going to them. We're going above them." That night, Carolyn called an old friend of hers, Judge Raymond Montrose, retired but still sharp enough to scare half the county courthouse. We met him the next morning in a coffee shop. His handshake was firm, his eyes observant. "Carolyn tells me you've been robbed by your own flesh and blood," he said. "Not robbed," I corrected softly. "Ambushed," he nodded. "Good distinction. Means you were prepared." I slid him a manila folder. Copies of emails, phone bills, notarized pages. Judge Montrose scanned them like a man defusing a bomb. "Son of a gun," he muttered. "They forged notarization signatures. Dumb mistake. That'll bite them." He looked up at me. "What do you want out of this, Walter?" I didn't hesitate. "My home back. My accounts unfrozen. And for my son to understand what the word honor used to mean." He gave a small nod. "Then we'll give him a lesson he'll never forget." Meanwhile, Darren and Mia were busy playing house. Carolyn, ever resourceful, showed me their social media. Posts of family dinners, new cars, even a home blessing video in my old living room. One clip stopped me cold. Mia laughing as she handed Darren a drink. "To new beginnings," she said. And Darren replied, to letting go of the past. I didn't feel rage, just a steady kind of silence. The kind men learn from years of watching radar screens waiting for blips that shouldn't be there. They'd made one mistake. They thought I was gone. A week later, I started collecting the digital trail. My old laptop, though outdated, was still secure. I logged into my pension accounts, utilities, and veterans benefits, every access tied to my social security number. Each login attempt from their home IP address left a timestamp. I recorded all of it. Then I called the county recorder's office and confirmed what I already suspected. Darren had filed a deed transfer online, using an electronic notarization service. One, Carolyn and I both knew was legally invalid without in-person verification. The clerk agreed to flag the record as under review for fraud. Quietly, no alerts sent. 4. The first time in weeks, I felt air fill my lungs fully. By mid-February, I'd built a case file thicker than a flight manual. Still, I didn't reach out to Darren. Not a call, not a text. Silence is a weapon too. Let them believe they'd erased me. Let them live in the comfort they'd stolen, because the longer they relaxed, the harder the fall would hit. At night, I sat on my cot at the VFW and stared at Elaine's old locket hanging from my keychain. Inside, her picture had faded, but her message hadn't. On the back, she'd engraved, "Fight clean, but fight smart." That line had gotten me through every deployment. And now it would guide this one. The plan was forming, not vengeance, but correction. Carolyn would prep the legal proof. Montrose would stand by for the official hearing. And I would time my strike not in a courtroom, but where it would echo loudest, in front of everyone who believed my son was a hero. I ended each night with the same entry in my notebook. February 22nd, 11:04 p.m. They took my house, my savings, my name. I'll take their illusion. When dawn broke over Boulder, I packed my uniform, polished my medals, and booked a speaking slot at the Veterans Memorial Ceremony in early March, the one Darren had promised to attend, in my honor. He thought it was a tribute. He was half right, because in 3 weeks I wasn't just reclaiming a house. I was reclaiming the truth. And when an old soldier reclaims the field, he doesn't ask permission. By March, Boulder was thawing, but I wasn't. Each morning I'd wake before dawn at the VFW post, make a pot of coffee strong enough to wake ghosts, and go over my files again. 47 pages of documentation, timestamps, and notarized originals. Each one a nail in the coffin of Darren and Mia's little empire. Most men my age spend retirement counting pills or watching weather channels. Me, I was counting signatures, and one of them was about to hang my son. Carolyn came by that Monday, her red notebook in hand. She sat across the table, glasses low on her nose. "Walter," she said, "I've got confirmation from the clerk's office. The deed Darren submitted was marked as invalid pending investigation. But if we push this quietly through legal channels, it could take months." I stirred my coffee. "We don't have months," she smiled a little. "Didn't think you'd say anything else." That's when she slid a flash drive across the table. "Everything you need is on here, the real deed, the notarization log, your ownership verification, and the decoy signatures Darren filed. All cross-referenced. It's bulletproof." I turned the small drive over in my palm. It weighed almost nothing. But it carried 40 years of work, loss, and trust. I'd already reached out to Judge Montrose, and he'd done his part quietly. The man still had friends in the county offices, the kind who owed him favors from decades of clean rulings. He called me that afternoon. "Walter, it's time you stop thinking like a father and start thinking like an engineer again. We're not just fixing what broke. We're showing the whole damn system how it was rigged." His voice had that gravelly edge of a man who'd spent years commanding courtrooms. He continued, "There's an opening at the Veterans Memorial next week. Press will be there. Local officials, too. That's your field, Walt. You walk in wearing that uniform, and you don't just get your house back, you get your dignity back." I said nothing for a moment, just stared at the folder in front of me, the one labeled Property Transfer Briggs. Walter nullified. "I'll be there," I said finally. But before I could face them in public, I needed to see the damage myself. That Friday, I parked 2 blocks away from the house that used to be mine and walked the rest of the way under the streetlights. The place looked colder somehow. Windows dark, lawn overgrown, wind chimes clattering against the porch rail. Through the front window, I could see them inside. Darren was on the couch, feet up, watching a game. Mia sat on her phone, scrolling, laughing at something. There was no warmth there, just comfort built on theft. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds before turning away. The old me, the father, the forgiving man, would have knocked, would have tried to reason. But the man who stood in the shadows that night, he was done knocking. The next morning, I walked into the county records office wearing my old Air Force jacket. The clerk, a young guy named Trevor, froze when I placed the folder on the counter. "Sir, are you?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "The one they wrote about." He opened the folder and scanned the notarized pages. "These are legitimate." "Who notarized this?" "Carolyn Miles, paralegal, 25 years experience, state certified." He nodded. "Sir, I'll fast-track this. You'll have official reinstatement by next Thursday." "Good," I said. "Make sure the update's time-stamped." "I'll need that for the press," Trevor blinked. "Press?" I gave him a small, tight smile. "Son, I'm an engineer. I like to show my work." That night, Carolyn and I sat in her living room finalizing what we called the counterdeed package. She'd organized every document into a neat binder, front page labeled, "Proof of fraudulent conveyance and retained ownership, Walter Briggs." It included the original notarized deed in my name, the forged copy Darren had filed online, the decoy transfer form I'd intentionally let him use, marked non-binding, copies of my recorded phone calls and email logs, a sworn affidavit from Judge Montrose verifying chain of custody. "Walt," she said, tapping the binder, "this isn't just evidence. This is your shield." "And a little sword," I added with a grin. She chuckled. "You sure you're ready for this kind of attention? Press cameras, maybe even national coverage?" I looked down at the uniform folded neatly beside me. The medals were dull from years in drawers, but they still caught the light when I turned them. "I spent my life serving quietly," I said. "This time they'll hear me." A few days later, I got a call from Channel 7 News. Apparently, word had leaked that a veteran was taking back his stolen home. I didn't deny it. The reporter asked if I wanted to comment before the Veterans Memorial event. "Not yet," I said. "But tell your cameraman to keep the lens ready. There'll be something worth filming." On the morning of the event, I polished my uniform until it gleamed. Carolyn handed me the binder. "You nervous?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, just steady." The plan was simple. Montrose would attend as a guest of honor. The mayor would introduce me as a speaker. And during my speech, I'd reveal everything, on record with proof before a crowd of witnesses and local officials. It wasn't revenge. It was restoration. The night before, I couldn't sleep. I walked to the diner where Jackie was closing up. She poured me a coffee and sat across from me. "You really think it'll make a difference?" she asked softly. I looked out the window at the dim street. "Maybe not for them," I said. "But for the next old fool who signed something out of love, yeah." "It might," she smiled faintly. "You're a good man, Walter." I sipped the coffee. Just one who got tired of being quiet. When dawn broke over the Rockies, I zipped up my uniform jacket, slid the binder under my arm, and headed toward the memorial grounds. Darren and Mia didn't know I'd be there. They thought the speech was in their honor, for family values and veteran legacy. I almost laughed thinking about it. They'd built a monument to their own greed, and by noon tomorrow, I'd be standing on it, holding the real deed in my hand. March 11th, 10:07 a.m. The Boulder Veterans Memorial stood polished and ready, flags rippling, brass glinting, chairs lined in perfect rows. The smell of coffee and pine filled the air. It was the kind of crisp morning that made your breath look like smoke and your thoughts feel heavy. I wore my old Air Force blues, pressed the way Elaine used to do before every ceremony. My medals dulled by years still caught the morning light like small pieces of forgiveness. From the parking lot, I spotted them. Darren, my son, in a sharp gray suit. Mia, in black heels and a smile that could cut glass. They were shaking hands, laughing with a reporter. Acting like royalty. They hadn't seen me yet. At the check-in tent, the mayor greeted me warmly. "Mr. Briggs, so glad you could make it. We're honored to have you speak." "Appreciate the invitation," I said. The crowd began to fill. Veterans, families, city officials, and a few local news cameras. The podium was set between the memorial plaques and the flagpole. Judge Montrose stood off to the side, hands clasped behind his back. When our eyes met, he gave me a slow nod. Carolyn was seated near the front, her notebook on her lap, calm as ever. I'd gone over my speech 100 times, but the words didn't matter. Not the ones I'd written, anyway. At 11 sharp, the mayor took the stage. Today we honor those who served our nation with integrity and courage, and few exemplify those values more than Mr. Walter Briggs, United States Air Force, retired. Applause rose, polite but warm. Darren clapped too, loud, deliberate, maybe even proud. For a second, I almost wished he meant it. I stepped up to the podium. My fingers brushed against the binder under my arm. It was time. Thank you, I began. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. When I joined the Air Force, I learned 2 things early: discipline and documentation. You follow procedure. You keep records. You make sure the truth doesn't get lost in the noise. I looked at the crowd, maybe 100 faces, and found Darren's among them. His smile flickered. For most of my life, I continued, I thought honor was something you passed down like a family heirloom. You build it, you protect it, and one day, you trust your children to carry it forward. The wind caught my uniform flag patch. Flapping once, but sometimes, I said softly, you pass it down and it gets dropped. A hush fell. Even the children in the crowd stopped fidgeting. I reached into the binder and held up a document. The real deed, crisp and notarized. This, I said, is the original title to my home on Ridgeview Drive. Signed by me, notarized by Carolyn Miles, and stored safely 3 years ago. Then I pulled out another sheet, Darren's forged version, and this is the copy filed under my son's name, claiming I transferred ownership voluntarily. Filed online using an electronic notary service that didn't exist when the signature date says it did. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Darren's smile vanished. I turned toward the cameras. 3 months ago, after my wife's death, I trusted my son and his wife to help me manage my affairs. Instead, they helped themselves, to my home, my savings, and my name. They changed my locks. They left me stranded at an airport with a one-way ticket and no place to return to. Gasps. I felt my throat tighten, but I steadied myself. I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here to remind every veteran, every parent, never sign a thing without witnesses you trust. Love can blind you faster than deceit ever could. Darren suddenly stood, face pale. Dad, what are you doing? The microphones caught his voice. Cameras swung toward him. I looked straight at him. I'm telling the truth, son. Something you misplaced when you found greed. He started forward, but Judge Montrose moved subtly in his path. His presence alone enough to stop him cold. Then Montrose spoke, voice deep and clear enough to carry. For the record, the county registrar reinstated Mr. Briggs's ownership as of this morning. The fraudulent transfer has been voided, and charges are pending under state elder exploitation statutes. The crowd erupted, gasps, whispers, flashes from cameras. Mia grabbed Darren's arm. Let's go, she hissed. But the officers nearby, there to assist with event security, were already stepping closer. I kept speaking. I spent my life defending people I'd never met. It hurts that I couldn't defend myself from the people I loved most. But I did what I was trained to do. Document. Verify, act. The microphone trembled in my hand. Not from fear, but from everything I'd held in for months. Then I set the binder down and finished. You can lose your home. You can lose your savings. But you don't lose your honor unless you hand it over. And mine's staying right here. Applause began slowly, then grew, strong, loud, righteous. Reporters surged forward, flashes lighting the stage. Behind me, Darren was being questioned by officers. Mia was crying, not out of remorse but shock. The cameras caught everything. Afterward, I stepped down from the podium and met Carolyn halfway. She squeezed my arm. You did it, Walt. Yeah, I said softly, eyes on the flag fluttering above. But it shouldn't have needed doing. Judge Montrose joined us, shaking my hand firmly. You handled it with grace. Not vengeance, just truth. That's rare these days. Truth was all I ever wanted, I said. The rest will sort itself out, he smiled. It already has. By sunset, the story was on every local channel. Veteran outsmarts his own son's real estate scam, publicly reclaims home at memorial event. Reporters called me a hero. I didn't feel like one. I just felt tired. The kind of tired that comes after battle when the noise fades and only the silence stays. As I drove past my old house that evening, I didn't stop. Not yet. The porch light was dark now. The SUV gone. For the first time in months, it looked like a home again. Quiet. Waiting. I parked down the street and whispered to the empty air. You were right, Elaine. When they underestimate you, that's when you start building. And tomorrow I'd start rebuilding. Not the walls, but the peace inside them. Before we conclude this story, if you really enjoy this, make sure to hit the subscribe button. 3 weeks after the memorial, I stood on my old front porch again. The winter air had thinned into something softer, the kind that carried the faint smell of pine and rain. A locksmith I'd hired from town finished swapping out the deadbolt, my lock on my door again. He handed me the new keys. Welcome home, Mr. Briggs. Home. That word felt heavier than I remembered, like lifting a medal from a drawer after years of silence. I stepped inside. The house smelled of paint and lemon cleaner. Most of Darren and Mia's things were gone, though they'd left behind traces: an empty wine rack, a broken clock, a cracked family photo frame with my wife's face turned down. I picked up the frame and fixed it. Sorry you had to see all that, Elaine, I said quietly. I didn't cry. Not this time. Maybe I'd run out of tears, or maybe I'd finally earned the right to stop using them as armor. The first night back, I made myself a simple dinner, tomato soup and toast, and sat at the kitchen table that had once held birthday cakes, maps, and old Air Force manuals. The chair across from me was still empty, but for the first time it didn't feel lonely. It felt sacred. In the weeks that followed, I met with Judge Montrose and Carolyn to finalize everything. Darren and Mia were charged with elder exploitation, forgery, and wire fraud. Their lawyer tried to negotiate restitution in exchange for leniency. I didn't fight it. I wasn't looking for vengeance, just closure. At the sentencing, I told the court, they didn't steal my money. They tried to steal my dignity, and I'm taking it back. The judge nodded. It wasn't triumph I felt when Darren looked at me from the defendant's table. It was a strange kind of mourning. For the son I raised, for the trust that once lived between us, for the family that broke itself trying to climb a ladder that didn't exist. The news coverage wouldn't stop for a while. Reporters called me the veteran who outsmarted his own son. I didn't like the title. I wasn't proud of the pain behind it, but if it got one man or woman my age to double-check a signature, to question a too eager relative's help, then maybe it meant something. That's when Carolyn came to me with an idea. You could turn this into something good, Walt. A trust, a foundation for other vets. You already did the hard part, I smiled. You mean the part where I got betrayed and stranded at an airport? She grinned. No, the part where you kept records and stayed calm. That's rarer than you think. 2 months later, we registered it officially. The Briggs Homefront Trust, a non-profit for veterans over 65, offering free legal counseling, document verification, and fraud prevention education. Judge Montrose agreed to serve as honorary chairman. Carolyn became lead advisor, and me, I became the old guy who answered the phone at the front desk, the one who always began with, "Tell me what they made you sign." The first case we handled was a retired Navy mechanic from Colorado Springs. His niece had borrowed his pension checkbook. We helped him recover it within 3 weeks. The look on his face when he walked into his bank again, proud, upright, in control, reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just exhales. That summer, I hosted a small barbecue in my backyard. The VFW guys came, the mayor stopped by, and even the neighborhood kids ran around chasing fireflies. Carolyn made her famous peach cobbler, and Montrose brought ribs that tasted like they'd been slow-cooked in patience. As the evening cooled, I found myself standing alone at the fence line, watching the sunset dip behind the Rockies. The horizon burned gold, that kind of gold that looks earned, not given. Carolyn walked up beside me. You thinking about her? I nodded. Every day. She'd be proud, you know. I smiled faintly. She'd tell me I finally learned how to sit still. Later that night, I went through Elaine's old keepsake box. Inside, I found one of her handwritten notes, the kind she used to leave in my lunchbox before long deployments. It said, "Don't let the world teach you bitterness. Walt, the fight is never for revenge like it's for remembering who you are." I folded it and slipped it into my wallet, right behind my veteran ID. because that was the truth of it. I didn't win because I fought harder. I won because I remembered who I was. A soldier who documented everything. A husband who kept his promises. A father who still believed people could change. Even Darren. Last week, I got a letter from him, handwritten short. He said he was sorry, that he'd lost sight of the line between ambition and greed. That prison walls gave him too much time to think. I didn't reply, not yet. Some words need to rest before they're answered. But I put the letter in the same drawer as Elaine's note. Maybe one day when the anger's quieted, I'll read it again and find something human in it. Tonight, as I sit by the window with a mug of black coffee, I can hear the faint hum of the town. Laughter, traffic, life moving on. The porch light glows steady, and for the first time since that day at the airport, I don't feel left behind. I feel like I made it home. They thought they took my house. What they really took was my silence, and I took it back. Now I spend my days teaching others how to do the same. Because in the end, the home you defend isn't built of walls or deeds. It's built of memory, integrity, and the courage to reclaim both.